Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is staying safe, staying well, and staying indoors. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the WWE Universal Champion and, of course, its new champion, Braun Strowman. Now, I don't think it's a spoiler at this point. I think everyone's managed to catch up or see the highlights or see the results on social media that Braun Strowman is our new WWE Universal Champion on Friday Night Smackdown. He defeated the previous champion, Goldberg, during Night 1 of WrestleMania 36 this past weekend. Of course, Braun Strowman wasn't actually scheduled for the match in the build-up to WrestleMania. He replaced Roman Reigns, who pulled out due to concerns of his health and well-being due to being immunocompromised because of his previous bouts of leukemia. So it was only announced this past Friday, or last Friday, that Braun Strowman was going to be replacing Roman Reigns. There was no storyline explanation, no explanation whatsoever. It was just a random announcement that Braun Strowman was going to be replacing Roman Reigns and facing Goldberg at WrestleMania. And then come the event of WrestleMania, I think the match maybe went 3-4 minutes at most, and Braun Strowman defeated Goldberg after hitting, I believe it was 3 or 4 running power slams, and Braun Strowman went on to win his first WWE Universal Championship. Probably his like 5th or 6th, maybe even higher than that, opportunity at the Universal Championship, but he finally won the big one. He defeated Goldberg at WrestleMania. Now, we can talk about the whole subject of should Braun Strowman have been in the match or not? Should there have been other challengers? Should the match have gone ahead at all? Should the event have gone ahead at all? But we'll save that for a later day. On this video, we're just going to focus mainly on who could be Braun Strowman's challengers going forward, or who could be his next challenger going forward for the WWE Universal Championship. Now, I've come up with a few names, and I think logically there's an explanation, there's an answer, there's an argument for all 5, really, that could be Braun Strowman's next opponent or a future opponent for the WWE Universal Championship, and Braun Strowman defending the WWE Universal Championship against him. So the first name that came to my mind, of course, is a previous WWE Universal Champion, that being Bray Wyatt, the Fiend Bray Wyatt. Now, Bray Wyatt, of course, is coming off a monumental victory over John Cena at WrestleMania 36 in the Firefly Funhouse match. If you want to call it a match, some people, obviously, because it was a cinematic wrestling production, that's what I like to call it. It wasn't really a match. It wasn't exactly rest holds, sleeper holds, knockdown, tackle, arm drag, any of that stuff. It was a cinematic production. I loved it. I thought it was creative. I thought it was different. I thought it was a spectacle that was fitting of the ultimate spectacle, which, of course, is WrestleMania. So I have no qualms about that match whatsoever. Now, in terms of why or how the Bray Wyatt-Braun Strowman match could work, I think there's quite a few explanations you can dive into, or certainly a few directions of storyline that WWE could utilize for a Bray Wyatt or The Fiend versus Braun Strowman feud. Of course, the obvious one is the Wyatt family connection. Now, Bray Wyatt, when he had the Wyatt family, was the leader of the Wyatt family, recruited Braun Strowman back in, I believe it was 2015. It was the night after SummerSlam 2015, and Braun Strowman debuted on Raw, attacking Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose, and then joining the Wyatt family in the process. I think he even went on to use the name the Black Sheep of the Wyatt family, and even, to be honest, outside of the ring, Braun Strowman has talked openly about how Bray Wyatt is a mentor to him. They're like a brother. I believe Braun Strowman is actually the godfather to Bray's latest child. That's the kind of close bond that they have together. Now, they can perhaps save the more intimate stuff for a future storyline between Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman, but you can certainly use the Wyatt family history there. Of course, once Braun Strowman was drafted to Raw in the 2016 WWE draft, he left the Wyatt family. Bray Wyatt was drafted to SmackDown with the likes of Luke Harper at the time, and Braun Strowman really, ever since then, has been on his own and been a single star and risen to the prominence to whereby now he is the WWE Universal Champion. So that's a story they can tell there. You know, I taught you everything you know, but I haven't taught you everything that I know. The only time we've really had a potential Braun Strowman versus Bray Wyatt showdown was in the lead up, in my recollection anyway, was in the lead up to the 2016 Survivor Series event, the Team Raw versus Team Smackdown match, which is a sensational match. It's probably one of my favorite matches in the last, 4 or 5 years. It's actually this modern era. It's one of my favorite matches. Go back and watch it. And they had a Raw. It might have been the Raw prior to Survivor Series, whereby Team SmackDown and Team Raw faced off, and of course, Bray Wyatt was on SmackDown, Braun Strowman was on Raw. And they had a bit of a face-off there. I'm sure they had a bit of interaction at the Survivor Series match itself. But apart from that, they've been kept very distant. And thinking about it in storyline, it's not really mentioned Braun Strowman's past that much. He played the silent, foreboding monster in the Wyatt family. And then, of course, once he branched out on his own, the more personality of Braun Strowman was shown on camera, but they don't really talk that much about his past in the Wyatt family, so that'll be really interesting to dig into, especially considering Bray Wyatt isn't that character anymore. He's this multi-personality layered character with the Firefly Funhouse version of himself and also the Fiend, of course, and the Firefly Funhouse version always talks about his past life, correcting wrongs in his past life, and he can maybe try and correct a wrong which was letting go Braun Strowman. He can try and bring him back to the fold, shall we say. So there's lots of different directions there, and ultimately when it comes to the WWE Universal Championship and Bray Wyatt, you have to remember that he lost the championship to Goldberg in that 3-minute match. He's going to want his championship back. He never got his rematch. I know WWE don't really, or they say there's no contractual rematches anymore when we still do see them. Case in point, Monday Night Raw with the Raw Tag Team Championships. But there's certainly an element there where he can say, I want my rematch for the Universal Championship, and it just so happens to be against Braun Strowman. So I think there's certainly a story that WWE can tell there between Bray Wyatt and between Braun Strowman. Of course, there's the argument that many people will say, does Bray Wyatt need the Universal Championship? Which, of course, the answer to that is no. He doesn't need the Universal Championship. He's in a similar vein to The Undertaker, whereby the championship can also almost be a distraction on him. He doesn't need it. He's an attraction without it. And once he becomes a Universal Champion, like we saw at Super Showdown and like we saw in the past, you paint him into a corner because realistically, Bray Wyatt shouldn't be losing to hardly anyone. And once you book yourself into a corner with a champion like that, it's very difficult for them to drop the title. So that's something to consider. That's something to consider when booking Bray Wyatt in future WWE Championship or Universal Championship opportunities. So if not Bray Wyatt, who else could it be? Another name that comes to mind, in my mind, would be Sami Zayn. And I know people might be rolling their eyes there going, Sami Zayn, really? Universal Championship? Well, okay, hold up there. Hold up. Now, the last person to defeat Braun Strowman was indeed the current Intercontinental Champion, Sami Zayn. When was that? That was at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in February. Of course, Braun Strowman was the Intercontinental Champion at the time. He defended the title in a 3-on-1 handicap match against Sami Zayn, Cesaro, and Shinsuke Nakamura. And Sami Zayn, with the help of Nakamura and Cesaro, hit the Helluva Kick on Braun Strowman and pinned the Monster Among Men to win his first championship on the main roster and his first Intercontinental Championship. Now, Sami Zayn, I don't believe he's lost since then as well. He successfully defended the championship at WrestleMania against Daniel Bryan. He's got momentum, definitely. He's one of the biggest heels on the SmackDown roster currently. And look, he has a victory over Braun Strowman. It makes sense. And in terms of, I always think this when a champion is crowned at WrestleMania, WWE, or in this case, a Universal Champion at WrestleMania, their post-Mania feud, their first post-Mania feud for their championship, most likely one they're going to retain, so they're going to come out of that feud as the champion still. But it's really, really important because getting the title at WrestleMania really cements you as the guy for the year. This is the person that WWE are hitching the cart to, shall we say, and this is the one they're really strapping the rocket boots and they want to take WWE to the moon. So it's very important that your first post-WrestleMania feud for the championship is significant and it makes you look good. It gives you momentum and it's a start as you mean to go on sort of scenario. We saw it last year when it didn't really work. You had Seth Rollins and Baron Corbin at the time. Didn't really take off. But one that does spring to mind as a successful post-WrestleMania WWE Championship feud was when Roman Reigns took on AJ Styles post-WrestleMania 32. Those matches were fantastic. Now, ultimately, that WWE title reign would be cut short due to a wellness violation suspension for Roman Reigns, but I think those matches really did set the tone for the following year in WWE. So I think Sami Zayn is a perfect opponent for Braun Strowman post-WrestleMania. Yes, Braun Strowman would come out of that feud still the Universal Champion, but Sami Zayn has the ability to put on good matches with Braun Strowman. We've seen that in the past. They've got decent chemistry. There's a previous issue there, so they can build on that storyline. And look, Sami Zayn's got momentum on his side. And it would be, to be honest, about time that Sami Zayn is involved in a main event championship feud. How long has he been on the main roster now? What, 4, 5 years? And he deserves it. He absolutely deserves it, especially with his recent work in the last 6 or 9 months as that heel manager role. And he's transitioning more into getting back in the ring, but he's transitioning into that sort of Bobby Heenan style manager role, whereby you have to get through so many guys to get to him, and then when you do get to him, he gets the hell kicked out of him, and it's satisfying for the fans. And Sami Zayn has just got that role to perfection, but he needs to appear more in the ring because he's such a talent in the ring. People are almost forgetting that. His mic work and his character work has been so good recently that you almost forget of how much of a talent he is in the ring. And if you've got any questions about that, look at his Kevin Owens feud, look at his work in NXT. Sami Zayn can go in the ring. Let's not make any mistake about it. So Sami Zayn can certainly pull off the great matches with Braun Strowman. Yes, Braun Strowman would come out of this feud as the Universal Champion still, but I think it's beneficial to both men. One, it elevates Sami Zayn to a main event championship feud, and it also benefits Braun Strowman because he looks like $1 million and comes out of the feud still the Universal Champion. Another name, of course, that would be coming to a lot of people's heads when you say who's going to challenge Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship is, of course, Roman Reigns. Now, obviously, the logical story there is that Roman Reigns, of course, was scheduled to face Goldberg at WrestleMania for the Universal Championship. He pulled out, rightfully so, for health reasons and safety reasons, but Roman Reigns was the previous number one contender. He's got a legitimate stake to wanting the championship and wanting the championship shot. So whenever Roman Reigns does come back, whenever this whole craziness that the world we're living in at the moment blows over, I'm sure we will see a Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman match for the Universal Championship. The story's there, it makes sense. Braun Strowman can also say, look, I know I took your place at WrestleMania. You're owed a Universal Championship match. I'm going to give you the championship match that you deserve. It's the babyface thing to do, and Braun Strowman is the babyface here still, and so is Roman Reigns. It would be a babyface versus babyface feud, but it would make sense from a logical storyline. In terms of the matches, I think some of Braun Strowman, actually his best matches in the WWE were during his feud with Roman Reigns. That WrestleMania, post-WrestleMania 33 feud in 2017 between Braun Strowman and between Roman Reigns, those matches were sensational, and they actually had a couple of matches prior to that, didn't they? I believe at Fastlane that year also, before WrestleMania. So their matches have been great. I think Roman Reigns doesn't actually get enough credit for... He really did make Braun Strowman that year, and he even has gone on record saying that the most satisfying thing about that whole feud with Braun Strowman is that, quote, he made a monster. That's what he says, I made a monster. And he's absolutely right. He absolutely made a monster. And during that period of time, it just felt like there was a groundswell behind Braun Strowman. I would argue that is when Braun Strowman was really at his peak of popularity, and he was a heel at the time. That's how much you can show that Roman Reigns got this guy over. He got this guy over as a heel, and they had to turn him babyface because he's that popular. That's popularity. That's real popularity. When you get popular as a babyface, that they have to switch you, that is an unbelievable sign. Ironically, and unfortunately, at the time, they didn't really capitalize on that, and Braun Strowman didn't get his Universal Championship victory when some could argue that he should have. But look, he's Universal Champion now. They can certainly recreate that, and I'm sure, look, Braun Strowman has developed in the ring since then. He's a better worker than he was 3 years ago, so I'm sure the Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns matches would be better and bigger, and the crowd, when we do get crowds again, would certainly be invested in seeing that. I know that's something I would want to see. They've got the history. They've got a stake for why Roman Reigns should get a Universal Championship match. So I don't think Roman Reigns will be his next challenger for the Universal Championship in being Braun Strowman, but I do think eventually we're going to see a Braun Strowman versus Roman Reigns feud. It just feels inevitable at this point, doesn't it? As to who comes out of that feud as the Universal Champion, I don't know. Maybe that would be the perfect opportunity to turn Braun Strowman back into a heel. I always think he did his better work as a heel. And once he's a heel, he can do the more destructive stuff that got him over in the first place. You remember his feud with Roman Reigns, this is when he was doing those stunts every single week. This is when he's tipping over ambulances and he's throwing chairs from ringside at Roman Reigns. And people talk about that still to this day, and they share those memes and those GIFs to this day. That's what got Braun Strowman over in the biggest way. So I think a future feud with Roman Reigns is certainly the way that WWE will go. How immediately that will be, we'll have to wait and see it. To be honest, it depends on how quickly Roman Reigns comes back. I would say that he's probably not going to be back for the foreseeable future until the whole situation of the world we're living in blows over at the moment, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. So another name I was thinking of, obviously after Roman Reigns, would be Sheamus. Now, Sheamus came back at the start of the year, start of 2020, after being out pretty much a year. During that period of time, he got into the best shape of his life. But ever since his return, we haven't really seen anything substantial from Sheamus on WWE television. He had a brief feud with the likes of Shorty G, and he had a brief feud with Apollo Crews in that period of time, but they were squash matches, and they were nothing that really Sheamus could sink his teeth into. And then ever since we've had the empty arena shows in the Performance Center, we just haven't seen anything of Sheamus anyway. I suspect that's likely due to travel reasons of getting back in. I don't know if he lives in Florida or if he's based around Florida. Sometimes these travel issues at the moment can be a bit difficult, or maybe, quite frankly, just WWE doesn't have anything for him at the moment. Maybe they were saving him for something post-WrestleMania. It certainly seems like a waste to bring him back at his age. I believe he's 40 or 41 years of age. He's in his prime now, no doubt, and this is his last big run of his career. And he did such great work in the Bar of Cesaro for several years as that tag team, but you've got to remember his past, his beginnings in WWE, where he was a dominant single star, former two-time WWE champion, former, 3-time world champion, Royal Rumble winner, the accolades, King of the Ring. The accolades go on and on. Sheamus has had a Hall of Fame worthy career. There's no doubt about it. And I do think he's got one big run left in him. And certainly as a heel, he's playing this heel on SmackDown where he's a bully, he's a backstage bully, beating on the smaller guys, taking the smaller guys to task, calling them vermin in the case of Shorty G. What better guy to stand up to a bully than the big man like Braun Strowman himself? So that feud kind of writes himself. The bully becomes the bullied in that situation. I think that's something they could certainly tell. Braun Strowman can say to Sheamus, look, try and bully me. See if you can bully me. Then you have your issue. They can feud over the championship. A bit like the Sami Zayn scenario, I don't envisage Sheamus coming out of this one as the WWE Universal Champion. Depends how over the feud and Sheamus gets with the audience, whether it's at home or if they do eventually get in front of a crowd once again. But I do think that would be a good feud, a good post-WrestleMania feud for Braun Strowman to sink his teeth into, make himself look good. Look, Sheamus is a veteran as well. He can make sure that Braun Strowman looks $1 million, which is crucial, like I said earlier, to the post-WrestleMania championship feud. The champion has to look good. It sets their pace, it sets their tone, it sets their momentum for the year going forward. So it's vital that this post-WrestleMania feud is good. It's not bad television, it's good television. And most importantly, the champion coming out of it has more momentum and looks better than they did going into it. And I think Sheamus can certainly achieve that, whilst also elevating him to an upper card position for this big final run in his career. So finally, the fifth person I'm thinking of that could potentially be a Universal Championship challenger for Braun Strowman is none other than the charismatic enigma himself, Jeff Hardy. Now, Jeff Hardy, a bit like Sheamus, Jeff Hardy recently made his return to WWE after being out again nearly a year. I believe it was about 10 months, 9 months, something along those lines. And reports have come out and actually suggested that Jeff Hardy was considered for Braun Strowman's spot at WrestleMania. Some people, some higher-ups, did actually consider putting Jeff Hardy in the spot to defeat Goldberg at WrestleMania. Look, Jeff Hardy's always been a valued commodity in WWE. He sells a ton of merch. He's over with all aspects and age groups of the crowd, which is very important in WWE in the modern era. Back in the Attitude Era, they were only looking at a certain demographic of the audience. Now, you've got to be over with the kids, the teenagers, the 20-something-year-olds, all the way up to the grandpas and grannies in the audience. And Jeff Hardy ticks all those boxes. Why? Because he's a cross-generational athlete. He's appeared in multiple generations. He's cool to the people my age, the people that are 20, 30, 40-somethings. And he's also cool to the kids because he does flashy moves and he wears face paint and he's over with the crowd and he's over with the girls. The girls love him. The guys love him. Everybody loves Jeff Hardy. So he's a valuable commodity in WWE. I think maybe the reason they didn't go for him and they went for Braun Strowman instead is, look, it's no secret Jeff Hardy has had some issues over the past few years. He's still got some ongoing legal issues from his time outside of the ring the last year. Would it be a wise decision to put the Universal Championship on Jeff Hardy? I don't think so. But Jeff Hardy can certainly be a valuable post-WrestleMania Universal Championship feud against Braun Strowman. Jeff Hardy looks in the best shape of his career at the moment. He looks in phenomenal shape. He even talked about going to inpatient rehab and inpatient therapy. So let's hope that those legal issues are now a thing of the past and he can be a bit more reliable. And a bit like with Sheamus, we know that Jeff Hardy has maybe got about a year or 10 months left on his WWE contract. His contract was due to be the same length as his brother Matt Hardy, but due to Jeff Hardy's injuries, they added time, they being WWE, added time onto his contract for injury. So Jeff Hardy's got about, I would say, a year, maybe 18 months at a stretch left on his contract. And he's openly talked about this is his big final WWE run, a bit like how with Matt Hardy spoke about this, his last contract was going to be his WWE final run. And Jeff Hardy wants to make the most of it. He's talked about wanting to face the likes of Roman Reigns in the future, but he can also have a great feud with Braun Strowman. Jeff Hardy has always done his best work against, I would say, bigger guys. He can fly around the ring and be that underdog babyface that WWE can book really well, to their credit. And Braun Strowman can throw Jeff Hardy around the ring like the monster among men that he is. So I think that would be a good post-WrestleMania feud. My only concern would be that I would think that Braun Strowman would have to turn heel, because it's very hard for me to do a babyface versus babyface feud against Jeff Hardy, because you're always going to come out the heel. Jeff Hardy isn't going to get booed. And of course, at the moment, that's not necessarily an issue because there's no crowd. But if they do this feud and it goes to the point where we're in front of an audience again, that audience is going to be behind Jeff Hardy without a shadow of a doubt. So if your aim is to turn Braun Strowman heel, you can certainly achieve that with this feud. If you want to have good matches, you can achieve that in this feud. If you want to have memorable moments, we talked about the stunts that Braun Strowman has done in the past. Likewise, Jeff Hardy, even though he has changed his style in the ring going forward, he's taken less and less crazy bumps. Jeff Hardy will still take a crazy bump and want to make a moment in his last WWE run, and Braun Strowman might be the guy to facilitate something like that. How do you keep a monster like Braun Strowman down? How about jumping off a ladder or a Titantron or whatever to keep the monster down? It's certainly an option. I think a bit like with the Sami Zayn, Sheamus and Jeff Hardy situation, I couldn't envisage Jeff Hardy coming out of this feud as the Universal Champion, purely for the reasons I mentioned earlier about the legal issues, the reliability issues, and let's be honest, he might not be here in the WWE in 12 months' time. He might have moved to another company, or he might have retired from wrestling altogether, since this is most likely going to be his final WWE run, unless something goes tremendously well for both WWE and Jeff Hardy in this final run. But I think it's a feud that makes Braun Strowman look good going forward, and like I said earlier, I think that's the most important thing in these post-WrestleMania Championship feuds. But who do you think should be the next challenger for Braun Strowman's Universal Championship? Who do you think is going to be a future challenger for Braun Strowman's Universal Championship? What do you think of my picks? Let me know your opinions and picks below, and I'm sure I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.